The summer of 1876 was the kind that cracked leather and curled the leaves on the cottonwoods. Out near Tucson, Arizona territory, the sky had turned the color of old gunmetal, and the air shimmered above the sand like ghosts dancing in a funeral train. Folks said the heat did things to a man's mind, made him see things, feel things, do things. I was riding south from a cattle drive near Gila Bend, my pockets jingling, with just enough coin to feel hopeful and just enough dust in my throat to forget what hope tasted like. My horse, Jasper, was sweating through his flanks, and I was starting to think maybe we'd both earned a stretch of shade and a cold drink. That's when I saw the poster nailed to the telegraph pole at Five Fork Station. $5,000 reward, dead or alive. Jace McCoy and the Red Sky Riders. Now, I ain't the bounty hunting type. Never had the stomach for that sort of trade. But the name Jace McCoy, that one hit like a hot iron on my memory. Jace and I rode together once, back before the war ended and the land went dry. Back when honor still meant something, and a man's word was worth more than the coins in his belt. He was a smooth talker with a quick draw and a grin that could charm the spurs off a Texas Ranger. But somewhere along the trail, Jace took a darker road. Heard tell he turned outlaw, running, with a crew called the Red Sky Riders, named after the color of the sunset they left behind after every job. They said he was planning something big, something that'd shake the rails from Tucson to El Paso. A train job, some whispered, the kind with dynamite, smoke, and regrets. And wouldn't you know it, I just heard wind that the Red Sky Express, a private train hauling federal payroll and silver ore, was due to pass through the Dead Horse Narrows the next Friday, mid-afternoon, when the shadows are short and the heat sits on a man like a saddle full of nails. Now, I had no stake in it, not yet. But when I rode into Sand Mesa that night, the sheriff, old Ben Toombs, was leaning on the jail porch with a bottle of rye and a look like he'd swallowed a rattlesnake. "Charlie Graves," he said, seeing me before I even dismounted. "You still got that steady aim and soft touch I remember?" I grunted. "Depends what's chasing me." He tossed the bottle to his feet and nodded at the badge engine in the window. "Might be chasing ghosts, but I need a man who can ride clean and shoot straight. You know anything about Jace McCoy?" I didn't answer. I just looked past him, out at the sunset. It was red. Too red. He took my silence as the truth. I need someone who knows how Jace thinks. He's coming for that train, and I got a feeling he ain't looking to leave survivors. Well now, I never wanted to draw iron on a friend, but sometimes the past comes galloping back with a noose in hand, and I reckon I owed the world a little justice for the times I looked the other way. So I nodded slow, tipped my hat, and said, "Tell me where he's headed, Ben." Because that train wasn't just carrying silver. It was carrying my past, and reckoning a decade in the making. Dead Horse Narrows was the kind of place no sane man lingered long. The canyon walls squeezed tight, like a banker's handshake, and the sun only reached down for a few hours at high noon before leaving the place in an eerie kind of twilight. The perfect spot for an ambush, and I'd seen more than my share. Sheriff Toombs laid out the plan with a hand-drawn map spread over the poker table in his office. The train would be running light, just an engine, 2 freight cars, and a special armored caboose at the tail. Government silver inside, headed to Fort Stockton under the watch of 3 Pinkerton men. "Only a fool or a devil would try to rob that train," Ben muttered. I leaned in and tapped the canyon bend, or a man who thinks he's smarter than both. Ben nodded. That'd be Jace. We spent the next 2 days riding and planning. I recruited one man, Tomas Delgado, a wiry ex-cavalry scout with eyes like a hawk and a temper to match. He owed me a favor from a long time ago near Fort Bowie, and when I told him Jace McCoy might be coming, he didn't hesitate. "You're sure it's him?" Tomas asked as we crouched in the dry brush near the canyon's edge, watching the rail line shimmer under the midday sun. "I ain't sure of much these days," I said, wiping sweat from my brow. "But if I know Jace, he'll want that silver, and he'll want it with style." Sure enough, noon on Friday came like a thunderhead. The sky was white-hot, the heat thick as molasses, and not a breeze in sight. Then came the sound, the low, iron groan of wheels against track. The Red Sky Express, puffing steam like a dragon full of secrets. Tomas raised his spyglass and hissed. 3 riders, coming fast from the ridge. I looked where he pointed and felt my stomach twist. Jace led them, of course. He wore black, always had. Black hat, black shirt, black heart. Behind him rode 2 of the Red Sky Riders, one with a rifle slung lazy over his shoulder, the other holding what looked like dynamite. They weren't looking to stop the train. They were looking to tear it open like a can of beans. They'll hit it at the curve, I said, mounting up. We ride now, or we don't ride at all. Tomas and I spurred our horses and tore down the gulch trail, raising a cloud of dust and praying the train crew had nerves as strong as steel. Shots cracked like whips as we came into range, bullets whizzing past like angry hornets. Tomas peeled left, his revolver barking, while I drew iron and aimed for the rider with the dynamite. He went down in a red cloud, tumbling off his horse like a sack of grain. But Jace, he kept riding. He leapt off his mount onto the caboose, just as it rounded the bend, his boots landing hard on the iron roof. I could see him clear as day, that grin of his flashing through the smoke. That's when I knew. He wasn't in this for the silver. He was in it for me. The moment Jace's boots hit that caboose, time slowed like molasses in winter. The train roared beneath him, but he moved easy, like he was taking a Sunday stroll through a graveyard. I rode alongside the tracks, my mare foaming at the mouth, eyes wild as the devil's own. Tomas was somewhere behind, still trading fire with the last Red Sky rider, but I didn't dare look back. I had eyes only for Jace McCoy. He crouched low and yanked a bundle from his saddlebag, a stubby black stick with a fuse twitching in the wind. Dynamite. I shouted a curse that wasn't quite a prayer, drew my rifle and fired. The shot clipped the fuse clean, sent it spinning into the desert air like a firefly snuffed out. Jace looked up, spotted me, and grinned like he'd just found an old love letter buried in the dust. Then he waved. A man who waves at the fella trying to kill him. That's a man who don't expect to die. The train clattered into the canyon shadow, leaving the wide sky behind and drawing all its danger into a narrow throat of stone. The walls pressed close, dust rising in lazy curls where the wheels ground rock into powder. Jace disappeared down the ladder into the armored caboose. I had to make a decision. Could have let him go. Could have turned the reins and ridden out. Let the Pinkertons earn their pay. But that ain't how you square old debts. So I kicked my horse harder, drew even with the caboose, and leapt. My boots hit the metal roof with a clang that echoed up the canyon like a church bell at a hanging. My legs near gave out, but I stayed upright, rifle strapped tight to my back, Colt in hand. I dropped to a crouch and listened. Inside, gunfire crackled, close and brutal. The Red Sky Riders were in the train now, and it weren't going to end with silver. I eased down the ladder, heart thundering, sweat stinging my eyes. Inside, the caboose was dark, thick with smoke. One Pinkerton lay sprawled in the corner, his chest a mess of red, and his badge glinting dully, like a lie half told. The other 2 were crouched behind iron crates, returning fire at the open door where the last outlaw was pinned. And there was Jace, calm as ever, behind a stack of crates, fiddling with the safe like he'd done it 100 times. Could have left well enough alone, Charlie, he said without looking. But you always did love the hard way. I came to stop a robbery, I growled. Didn't reckon I'd be fasting a ghost. He chuckled. Ain't ghosts that haunt the past, just regrets. He spun around, twin pistols in hand, and the world turned to fire. The air inside that caboose turned thick with smoke and gunpowder faster than you can say draw. Jace's pistols roared, and I dove behind a stack of canvas bags, the sound of lead pinging off iron singing past my ears. The Pinkertons were pinned down, one bleeding bad from a shot to the shoulder. The other kept firing, teeth clenched like he was Che Win on lightning, but he weren't going to hold much longer. I popped up, squeezed off 2 shots. Jace ducked back, his laughter echoing like a dry creek in August. Still shooting, like you're scared to hit me, he called. I figured you'd have grown colder by now. You're robbing a federal train, I snapped. Ain't no room for mercy. He paused, then stepped out from behind the crate, slowly, real slow, like he wanted me to see. His guns were holstered, hands up just enough to not be surrendering, but not looking for a fight either. "There's more to this than silver," he said. I kept my aim dead on him, but something in his voice made my trigger finger hesitate. "I didn't take this job for money, Charlie. I took it for what's inside that safe." "What's inside is Uncle Sam's payroll," I said. "That all of a sudden mean nothing to you?" He stepped closer, just a pace. "No. What's in there?" he said, jerking his thumb toward the thick iron door. "Is a ledger. Names. Places. The kind of secrets men kill to keep buried." I frowned. "What in blazes are you talking about?" Jace's face darkened. "Those Pinkertons? They're not here to protect the silver. They're here to protect that ledger. It's a list of land deeds, stolen land, confiscated by a certain railroad baron who's been buying judges and burning ranches from here to Kansas." Now that was a tale, and Jace always was a storyteller. But I looked at him, sweat and smoke cutting rivulets through the dirt on his cheeks, and I didn't see a liar. I saw a man with nothing left but fire. The Pinkerton behind me shouted, "Don't listen to him, Graves. He's a killer." I turned just enough to look, and in that heartbeat, Jace moved. Not to draw, not to shoot, to the safe. He spun the dial, fast, practiced, and with a heavy clunk, the door swung open. Inside sat stacks of silver, but beneath it, wrapped in oilskin and sealed with wax, was a book the size of a saddlebag. He held it up. "This," he said, "is why I came." Then the last Red Sky rider kicked open the side door, rifle aimed, and all hell broke loose again. The last Red Sky rider came through that side door like a thunderclap, rifle raised, eyes wild, hollering Jace's name like a prayer and a curse all rolled into one. I spun gun up and fired. Missed. Tomas, bless his reckless soul, came barreling in from the far end, shoulder first, knocking the outlaw clean out the door and onto the tracks with a yell and a thud that left no doubt. He wasn't getting back up. The silence that followed was thicker than molasses. No more shots. No more shouts. Just the rattle of the train wheels below us and the hiss of steam from the engine. Jace still held the ledger, his face unreadable. "You gonna hand that over?" I asked, breathing hard, gun still pointed. "No," he said. "I'm gonna give it to someone who can do something with it." "That ain't you." He smiled, crooked, tired. "No, Charlie. It's you." That threw me. Hit like a sucker punch. "You were always the one who gave a damn," he said. "Even when we was young and stupid, riding fences and playing war. You wanted to fix things. I wanted to watch him burn." The Pinkertons behind me stirred. One was still bleeding, the other reaching for his iron slow. Jace raised his voice. "Move again, and you'll never see your next paycheck." The man froze. Then Jace looked at me. "You take this book. Ride straight to El Paso. There's a judge, Merrick. Old. Honest. He'll know what to do." "Why don't you do it?" "Because I got too many sins to be the messenger." He looked past me, out the busted window, and I reckon I won't make it out of this canyon anyhow. That's when I heard it, the whine of another horse, fast and hard, coming from the ridge. A fresh posse. Or worse. Tomas popped his head through the door. "Charlie, we got company. And they ain't wearing stars." Jace tossed the ledger into my arms. "You run," he said. "You run now. You got one chance to make it count." I hesitated. We'd shared firelight, shared blood. He saved my life once outside Dodge, and now he was off-airing me a burden heavier than gold. But I took it. I grabbed the book, slung it in my saddlebag, and leapt off the train, Tomas right behind me. We hit the ground running, our horses waiting where we'd left him. Behind us, the Red Sky Express thundered on. And Jace McCoy, he stayed aboard, with one last chance at redemption, and a six-shooter full of justice. The summer sun bore down like Judgment Day, painting the world in gold and sweat. Tomas and I tore across the basin east of Dead Horse Narrows, the ledger heavy against my side, the hooves of our mounts pounding like drums of war. We didn't talk. Didn't have to. Behind us, a trail of dust rose like a signal fire. A posse of riders, 8 maybe 10, churning the desert with every gallop. I didn't need to see their faces to know who sent him. The kind of men who don't wear badges, but carry the law in their pockets. Railroad men, hired guns, killers. We rode hard till dusk, cutting through dry gulches and scrubland, the sun bleeding into the western sky. My throat was raw, my legs numb, but we couldn't stop. Not yet. Not with that book of names and lies clutched to my saddle like a newborn. Tomas finally raised a hand and veered off toward a notch in the rocks. A narrow pass leaded into a canyon I hadn't seen in years. "Place up here," he called. "Old sheepherder's cabin. Been dead near a decade, but it's got cover." We made it just as night dropped her shawl over the land. The cabin was a squat thing, half-eaten by sand and time, but its stone walls still held. We pulled the horses inside, rubbed them down quiet-like, then lit a single lamp. Inside, I opened the ledger. Names, land parcels, dates, signatures forged by the same hand over and over. Whole families' lives, stolen with a flick of ink and a cold heart, and all of it traceable. Tomas leaned over my shoulder, whistling low. "Well, now I see why they're willing to kill," he said. "This ain't just fraud. This is a whole damn empire built on lies." I nodded. Jace was right. If we get this to Judge Merrick in El Paso, it don't just stop a train job. It brings the whole house of cards crashing down. He raised an eyebrow. "That's if we live to make it there." I didn't answer. Outside, the coyotes cried like mourners at a grave, and somewhere out in that dark, the riders still hunted. We took turns watching the night, both of us too strung up to sleep. I kept my hand near my Colt, the book tied tight to my chest like a keepsake. I thought about Jace, alone on that train, fastened down the Pinkertons and their bosses, with nothing but charm and bullets. I thought about the first time we rode together, back in '68, herding cattle and drinking river water with the stars overhead. I wondered if he was still breathing. Come morning, we'd ride for El Paso. But tonight we sat in the stillness, two men against a world that didn't want truth. And truth, friend, it rides harder than any outlaw. We broke camp at dawn, shadows stretching long across the canyon walls, and headed south along the Salt Fork Trail. El Paso lay nearly 80 miles ahead, but the map in my mind said there was a shortcut, dangerous and dry, through a ghost town called Perdido. Tomas didn't like it. "Perdido's cursed," he said, spitting to the side. "Bandits, rattlers, and worse. Ain't no water for 20 miles. I shrugged. "It's cursed or it's fast, and I'd rather outrun a curse than ride into a bullet." So Perdido it was. By midday, the land had gone still, real still. Not a breeze stirred the brush, and even the buzzards circled high and quiet. We crested a rise, and there it lay, Perdido, sprawled out like a corpse in the sun. Wooden buildings sagged in on themselves, roofs caved in, doors swinging on rusted hinges. It had been a mining town once. Then the silver ran dry, and the folks ran drier. We rode in slow. Boots hit the dirt with the weight of ghosts. The horses nickered uneasily, and I didn't blame him. We found the old saloon standing more or less upright, and slipped inside. Dust lay thick as snow, and the bar still held a few chipped glasses. Tomas went to check the windows, while I laid the ledger flat on the table, flipping through it again. That's when we heard it, hoofbeats. Fast. Close. Company. Tomas hissed, crouching near the door. I peeked out through a broken shutter. 4 riders. Black dusters, white hats, rifles slung low. Hired men, same ones who chased us since Dead Horse. And worse, they weren't alone. With them came a man in a gray coat and polished boots. Tall, thin, and too clean for this kind of work. Railroad man. He dismounted like he owned the dirt. "Fan out," he said. "They're here." Tomas and I traded a look. 2 rifles, 1 shot of dynamite, and a book full of secrets, he said dryly. I gave a grim smile. Just another day. They came in slow, searching every doorway, every alley. We waited until they passed the livery before I nodded at Tomas. He hurled the dynamite through the window. It hit the dust with a thunk, rolling, just far enough before lighting the night on fire. The boom shook Perdido down to its bones. Screams and shouts filled the air, and we bolted out the back, riding, hard down the old mining road. Bullets kicked up behind us, barked orders and thundering hooves. Tomas turned in the saddle, letting loose shots that sent one rider sprawling into the dust. But the rest gave chase. We rode like devils. Dust choked our lungs, the sun blistered our backs, and the ledger beat against me with every stride, whispering names like a preacher at a funeral. We didn't look back. Couldn't. The road to El Paso was still long, and Perdido had given us our warning. By the time we left Perdido behind, the sun had turned cruel. Sky was clear as glass, but the air shimmered like spirits were dancing on the rocks. Tomas and I rode south by compass and gut, the lantern into cracked earth and skeletal shrubs. We aimed for the Rio Bravo. If we could reach the water and cross the flats beyond, El Paso would be a day away. That's when we hit the Valley of Bones. They don't mark it on maps. A long wash where cattle skulls and rusted wagon wheels that the sand like grave markers. The wind don't howl here, it whispers, like it knows your name. Tomas pulled up his bandana and glanced back. You feel that? I nodded, like something's watching, and it was. 2 riders broke the ridge behind us, one of them leaning heavy in the saddle, blood staining his shirt. Survivors from the Perdido posse, most like. They didn't shout, didn't threaten, just spurred their horses and came straight at us. We took cover behind a cluster of black rocks, rifles drawn. Tomas fired first, clean shot, dropped the wounded one like a sack of grain. The other circled wide, firing from the hip, bullets sparking off stone. I raised my Colt, waited for the right angle, and then I saw his eyes. Wild, glassy. No hatred, no vengeance, just fear. He was running from something. Not us. Tomas dropped him with a gut shot that echoed off the canyon walls. We stood over him as he bled into the dust. His voice was raw. They sent someone else. Who? I asked. His lips twitched. A preacher in black. Then he died. Tomas looked at me. What kind of preacher rides with killers? I didn't answer. I'd heard whispers in border towns about a man like that. Black hat, black coat, silver cross, and a Colt carved with verses. They said he worked for the railroad. They said he didn't miss. We buried the rider shallow, said no words, and moved on. That night, we camped by the river, fire low, stars thick overhead. I pulled out the ledger again, studying it like scripture. Whole county's worth of names. Every ranch stolen. Every lie signed with a flourish. We were close now. El Paso was out there, just past the river, and maybe justice with it. But I knew in my bones. We weren't riding alone anymore. We crossed the Rio Bravo at first light, hooves splashing through waters that ran cool and mean. Beyond the bend, El Paso rose like a mirage, sunlight bouncing off red brick and dust-glazed rooftops, train whistles singing faint through the morning heat. Tomas and I rode hard till the city wrapped around us. Alleys running like veins, the smell of sweat, horses, and coffee thick in the air. We stabled the mounts near the old cathedral, where the adobe still bore bullet holes from a skirmish 5 summers back. You sure about this, Judge? Tomas asked, eyes scanning the street. Merrick's clean, I said. Old Union man. Hates the rail barons near as much as Jace did. We didn't waste time. Slipped through the courthouse back door, past sleepy clerks and men with too many papers and not enough time. Upstairs, the judge's chambers were dim and cool. A fan turned slow overhead. Merrick looked up as we entered. His hair was white, thick with sweat, spectacles perched crooked on a nose like a hawk's beak. Graves, he muttered. Heard rumors you were dead. I set the ledger on his desk. Not yet, but if this don't matter, I might as well be. He opened it, read a few lines, and paled. Dear God, he whispered. These are land titles. Dozens. Hundreds. Signed under duress, false witnesses. The Durham line, this is every parcel east of the Brazos. And the railroad's been using hired guns to keep it quiet. He closed the book slow. This is enough to bring them down. But before he could say another word, boom, a shotgun roared outside. Tomas spun toward the window. They found us. Men were coming. 5 at least. 2 with rifles. One wearing a long black coat. The preacher. He walked calm, boots steady on the courthouse steps, silver cross swaying from his neck. His face was young, too young, but his eyes, they were carved from stone. Merrick's hand trembled. "I'll lock this in the vault," he said. "You hold that door." Tomas and I barricaded the hallway, guns drawn. The first man threw caught a bullet between the eyes, didn't even scream. The second fired wide, grazing my arm before I dropped him with 2 to the chest. Then the preacher stepped through the smoke. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He raised his Colt, the barrel etched with scripture, and fired once. Tomas cried out and dropped. I dove behind a desk, returned fire. But the preacher moved like mist, ducking low and silent. He was close now. Real close. Too close. I heard Merrick's vault slam shut behind me. Then I stood, face to face with the man who brought death in a sermon. "Lay down the gun," he said. "You give me the book, and you walk away." I gritted my teeth. "You know what's in it." He nodded. "I know." And that was the worst part. He knew. And he still came. The preacher's eyes held no hate, just certainty. Like he believed the bullet he was about to fire was God's own truth. But I'd seen that kind of certainty before. On battlefields. In back alleys. In the dead, staring up with questions unanswered. My Colt was still warm in my hand. His was steady. We stood there, not a breath between us, till Judge Merrick's voice cut through like a blade. "You fire that gun, son," he growled, "and every paper in Texas is going to carry your name next to mine." The preacher didn't flinch. Merrick stepped forward, ledger clutched tight in one hand, a revolver in the other. "You think the railroad's going to protect you? They'll bury you with the rest once this story breaks." Still, the preacher didn't move. Then from the floor, Tomas stirred, blood on his shirt, but his eyes open, his hand wrapped around his sidearm. "You ain't the only one carrying faith," he rasped. The preacher's jaw clenched. His Colt twitched. I fired first. The shot cracked like lightning through dry timber, echoing off marble and glass. The preacher staggered, a bloom of red on his chest. His gun clattered to the floor. He looked down, surprised, like he'd finally read a verse he didn't understand. Then he fell. Silence followed. Heavy. Complete. Merrick exhaled slow. "You all right?" he asked. I looked at Tomas. "He will be." "And the ledger?" Merrick nodded. "Under lock and key. By this time tomorrow, every land office from here to Abilene will be holding hearings." Tomas chuckled dry, wincing. "Guess we did it." But I didn't smile. Jace was gone. The Red Sky riders were scattered. Blood had been spilled on both sides of the tracks. Justice. Maybe. But it didn't feel clean. Later that week, we stood on the courthouse steps as the sun dipped low, painting the street in gold and fire. Papers had already started running the headlines. Rail Baron's empire falls. Ledgers reveal corruption. I stared down the track, listening to the distant whistle of the Red Sky Express. Now just another train, carrying freight and mail instead of secrets and lies. Tomas limped up beside me, a fresh bandage tied around his ribs. "What now?" he asked. I adjusted my hat. "Ride north. Maybe east. Find some shade that ain't bought and paid for." He grinned. "Still running?" I shook my head. "No. Just riding. Big difference." Behind us, the town moved slow, a little freer, a little louder. The kind of sound a place makes when the weight starts lifting. And as I walked down the dusty road, I tipped my hat to the past, to Jace, to the preacher, to every name in that ledger. Because out here in the West, stories end one of two ways, with a grave, or with a gun put away for good. And that day, I holstered mine.